Everyone tells you that when you're on the right path, you'll know. There'll be clarity, a sense of flow, doors opening, everything aligning in ways that feel obviously correct. And so when your life feels like the opposite of that, when you're confused, isolated, grieving, exhausted, unsure of every decision you've made for the last 2 years, you assume you've gone wrong somewhere. You assume you've missed a turn. You assume that this disorientation is evidence you've drifted off course. Carl Jung would tell you that you've been reading the signs exactly backwards. What Jung discovered, after decades of watching people move through the most significant transformations of their lives, was that the right path almost never announces itself with clarity. It announces itself with fog, with the slow dismantling of everything that used to make sense, with a kind of internal quiet that everyone around you mistakes for depression. The people who were genuinely heading somewhere meaningful in their lives, the ones whose trajectories he could track over years of observation, almost universally went through periods that felt, from the inside, like total collapse. And here's the part that mattered most to Jung. They didn't know they were on the right path while they were on it. They only recognized it afterward, looking back, when the fog finally lifted and they could see the shape of where they'd been walking the whole time. Today, I'm going to walk you through 9 specific signs Jung identified that indicate you're on the right path, even when, especially when, it feels like you're not. Signs that look like symptoms of something going wrong. Signs your family will worry about. Signs you'll be tempted to medicate, fix, or run from. But signs that, if you can recognize them for what they actually are, will give you something steadier than certainty to walk by. Because you can't see where you're going. That's a feature of this kind of path, not a defect. The first sign is that you feel more lost than you've ever felt, and the confusion isn't lifting. Most people associate being lost with being off track. If you were on the right path, surely you'd feel oriented. You'd have direction. You'd know what came next. So, when months go by and you still can't articulate what you want, where you're going, or who you're becoming, you assume something has gone deeply wrong. Jung saw this completely differently. He observed that genuine psychological development almost always begins with a period he described as disorientation in the deepest sense, the loss of the internal map you'd been using to navigate your life. And the reason you can't find a new map quickly is because you're not supposed to. The mapless period is the work. It's the psyche dissolving the old coordinates so it can develop new ones rooted in something more authentic than what you inherited. If you knew where you were going, you'd be heading there with the old self, the self that needs to die for this transformation to complete. The confusion isn't blocking your progress, it's the form your progress is taking right now. You're not lost in the sense of having missed something. You're lost in the sense that the old destinations have stopped pulling you, and the new ones haven't revealed themselves yet. That gap is uncomfortable. It's also exactly where you need to be. The second sign is that the people who used to feel like home don't feel like home anymore. You sit across from friends you've had for 15 years and something is missing. The conversations feel hollow. The old jokes don't quite land the way they used to. You find yourself nodding through interactions you used to look forward to. And the strangest part is that nothing has technically changed. They're still the same people. They still care about you. But something between you has thinned. Jung recognized this thinning as one of the most consistent markers of authentic development. He observed that when a person begins moving toward who they actually are, certain relationships start to feel like they're happening in a different language. The connections that were built on who you used to be, on the persona, on the agreements you made when you didn't yet know yourself, can't hold the weight of who you're becoming. This doesn't mean those relationships are bad. It means they were calibrated to a version of you that's no longer fully present. And the discomfort you feel in them isn't a sign that you've become cold or judgmental or selfish. It's information. Your psyche is telling you that something has shifted internally, and your external life hasn't caught up yet. Most people, sensing this shift, try to force themselves back into the old relational shapes. Jung would say, let the thinning happen. Let the relationships find their new level. The ones that can grow with you will. The ones that can't were never really yours. The third sign is that you're grieving things you chose to leave. This one confuses people more than almost any other sign. You made a decision. You left the job, ended the relationship, moved out of the city, walked away from the family role. You knew it was right. You can still articulate exactly why you left. And yet here you are, months later, mourning what you released, as if someone had taken it from you against your will. You assume this means you made a mistake, that if you were really on the right path, you wouldn't miss what you left behind. The grief feels like evidence that you should have stayed. Jung saw grief over chosen losses as one of the clearest signs that the loss was real and the decision was significant. Easy departures don't produce this kind of mourning. Inauthentic relationships don't generate this kind of ache when they end. The grief is heavy precisely because what you left had genuine meaning, even if it was meaning that couldn't continue. You can leave something that mattered. You can mourn something you needed to release. Both things can be true at once, and the maturity to hold both is what the path is teaching you. The mourning isn't a sign you should turn back. It's the cost of having actually moved. The fourth sign is that the things that used to comfort you have stopped working. The shows you used to binge feel like noise. The food you used to crave doesn't satisfy. The drink at the end of the day doesn't take the edge off the way it used to. The scrolling, the shopping, the small distractions you used to lean on, they all feel hollow now, like they're not actually addressing what you're feeling. You worry that you're depressed, that you've lost the capacity to enjoy things, that something's broken in you. But Jung would have read this differently. When the unconscious is doing genuine reorganization work, it loses tolerance for the numbing strategies that used to mask the real feelings underneath. The comforts stop comforting because you can't afford to be comforted anymore. Something deeper is trying to come through, and the surface anesthesia is interfering with that emergence. Your psyche is essentially refusing the painkillers because it needs you awake for what's happening. This is uncomfortable in the extreme. It's also a sign that something real is underway, something that the old version of you would have successfully avoided indefinitely. The fifth sign is that you've started noticing strange coincidences. You're thinking about someone and they call. You read about a concept on Monday and a stranger mentions it on Tuesday. A book falls off a shelf and the page it opens to contains an answer you've been searching for. A song comes on at the exact moment you're about to make a difficult decision, and it speaks to that decision directly. You try to dismiss these as coincidence, and your rational mind insists you should. But they keep accumulating, and the accumulation starts to feel like something more than chance. Jung gave this phenomenon a name: synchronicity. He described it as meaningful coincidence, moments where the inner and outer worlds seem to communicate with each other across the usual boundaries that separate them. And he observed that synchronicities tended to intensify dramatically during periods of genuine psychological transition, as if the deeper layers of the psyche, becoming more active during transformation, started reaching out into the world in ways the everyday mind couldn't fully explain. You don't have to believe anything mystical about these moments to take them seriously. You can simply notice that they're happening, that they're clustering, and that their clustering correlates with the period in your life that feels most uncertain. That correlation, Jung would say, is itself information. Something in you is awake in a way it hasn't been before. If what you're hearing so far is landing in places that feel tender, if these signs are describing something you've been quietly living through without having words for, there's a resource that might help you stay with the process rather than run from it. We've put together a guide called True Self-Discovery, 24 reflection exercises drawn from Jung's work, built for exactly the kind of disorientation that comes before something genuine emerges. The link is right below. It's there for when you need it. Now let's keep going, because there are 4 more signs, and the next one is the one almost everyone misses. The 6th sign is that you've started saying true things that scare you to say. Small things at first. You answer a question honestly when you would have softened the answer before. You decline an invitation without inventing an excuse. You tell someone you love them in a way you've never quite said it. You admit you don't know something when you would have pretended to know. And each time you do this, something inside you tightens, because the old self knew that honesty had costs. The old self had calculated, very carefully, how much truth was safe in each relationship, each situation, each conversation. Jung observed that one of the most reliable signs of someone moving toward genuine wholeness was the gradual collapse of their internal censoring system. The persona, the carefully maintained mask designed to navigate social reality, begins to lose its grip, and what comes through is a more direct version of the person, less filtered, less strategic, sometimes startlingly honest. This change usually frightens both the person experiencing it and the people around them. The relationships built on the old strategic self can't always handle the more direct version. But the honesty isn't reckless. It's the natural consequence of having less interior distance between who you actually are and what you actually say. That closing of the gap is exactly what the path produces. The seventh sign is that your dreams have become more vivid and harder to ignore. You wake up with images that won't leave you for hours, themes that recur night after night, strange figures, unfamiliar landscapes, conversations with people you haven't thought about in decades. Some of the dreams disturb you, some feel important in ways you can't articulate, and even the ones you can't remember leave a residue, a feeling that something significant was happening down there while you slept. Jung spent his entire career listening to dreams because he believed they were the most direct communication the unconscious had with the conscious mind. And he noticed that during periods of significant psychological transition, dream activity intensified dramatically. The unconscious had more to say. It was trying to compensate for what the waking mind couldn't yet see. It was offering symbols, warnings, glimpses of emerging patterns, and sometimes outright instructions about what was trying to happen in the person's life. If your dreams have come alive in the last few months, that aliveness isn't random. Your unconscious is trying to participate in what you're going through. You don't need to interpret every dream perfectly. You just need to take them seriously enough to notice that they're speaking, and to trust that something real is being communicated, even if the translation is slow. The eighth sign is that you've developed a quiet refusal you can't fully explain. There are things you used to do without questioning that you simply won't do anymore. Conversations you used to participate in that you now sit out of. Roles you used to perform that you've quietly stopped performing. You can't always articulate why. Someone asks you why you didn't show up to the family gathering, or why you stopped responding in the group chat, or why you've gone quiet at work, and you don't have a clean explanation. You just know that doing those things has become impossible in a way it wasn't before. This refusal often gets pathologized by the people around you. They call it withdrawal. They call it depression. They worry that you're becoming antisocial. Jung would have recognized it as something far more significant, the beginning of what he called the inner authority, a center inside you that finally has enough definition to say no to things that don't belong to it. For most of your life, that center was either absent or drowned out by the persona's need to maintain external approval. Now it's coming online. And one of the first things it does is start refusing the participation you used to give automatically. The refusal feels strange because you've never lived with this kind of internal authority before. But it's not malfunction. It's the most important psychological development you'll ever experience in its earliest, most unrefined form. The ninth sign is the one that's hardest to describe and the most important. It's the sense that something inside you is moving forward without your permission. You didn't decide to start questioning your life. You didn't choose for the relationships to change. You didn't sit down one day and plan to start grieving things you'd already left behind. And yet all of it is happening. And underneath all of it, there's a kind of momentum you can feel even when you can't see what's driving it. Jung had a name for this momentum. He called it the individuation process, the psyche's own intelligence, moving you toward wholeness on a timeline you don't control and through methods you wouldn't have chosen. He believed every human being carried this potential inside them, and that for most people, it stayed dormant their entire lives. But in some people, at some point, it activated. And once it activated, it couldn't really be stopped. You could resist it, slow it down, suffer through it. But the deeper movement underneath would continue regardless of what your conscious mind preferred. If you can feel that movement in yourself, that sense of something working in you that isn't quite you, that's carrying you somewhere you can't see, that wakes you up at night and won't let you settle back into the life that used to fit, then you're experiencing the most important sign of all. Your psyche has begun the work, and the work has its own intelligence, its own timing, its own destination. You don't have to understand it for it to continue. You just have to stop fighting it long enough to let it complete what it started. These 9 signs almost never feel like signs of being on the right path. They feel like confusion, loss, isolation, grief, refusal, strange dreams, hollow comforts, weird coincidences, and a movement you can't control. Most people who experience them assume something has gone wrong. They reach for fixes. They try to restore the old equilibrium. They tell themselves that if they were really heading somewhere good, it would feel better than this. Jung spent his career trying to tell people the truth they didn't want to hear about transformation. It hurts. It disorients. It strips away the comforts you used to lean on and the certainties you used to navigate by. It looks, from every conventional angle, like decline. And underneath all of that visible difficulty, it's doing exactly what it needs to do. The reason the right path doesn't feel like the right path is because the right path isn't designed to feel good. It's designed to make you real. And becoming real involves the death of every version of yourself that was built to please other people, fit into systems that didn't fit you, or survive conditions you've since outgrown. That kind of death doesn't feel like progress while it's happening. It feels like the worst period of your life. But you can recognize it for what it is, if you know what to look for. And the 9 signs we've walked through are the markers Jung saw most consistently in people who, years later, looked back and realized that the most disorienting period of their lives had been the most important one. The period where everything went quiet. The period where the old self stopped working. The period where the new self hadn't yet arrived, but was already beginning to make itself known through dreams, refusals, strange synchronicities, and the inexplicable grief over what they'd chosen to leave. If you're seeing yourself in these signs, if you're recognizing your own life in this description of fog and movement and quiet refusal, what Jung would want you to know is simple. You haven't gone wrong, you've gone deep. And the depth doesn't feel like clarity yet, because clarity arrives at the end of the process, not the beginning. What you have right now is something better than clarity, actually, even though it doesn't feel that way. You have authenticity in motion. You have a psyche that's finally telling you the truth about who you are and who you're becoming. And you have the rarest gift a person can receive, the discomfort that comes from being on a path that's actually yours, instead of the comfortable numbness of a path that belonged to somebody else. Stay in it, keep walking. The fog isn't permanent. The signs you're seeing aren't symptoms, they're confirmations, written in a language the conscious mind is only just beginning to read. If you haven't yet, take a look at our guide, True Self-Discovery, 24 reflection exercises rooted in Jung's work, designed for exactly the period you might be in right now. Not to rush you out of the fog, but to help you read what it's trying to show you while you're still inside it. The link is right below.